Hey everybody, this shall be the, for some, long-awaited presentation of the Lesser Ritual of the Hexagram, also sometimes called the Lesser Banishing Ritual of the Hexagram. Now, it's come to my attention in the last few months that a fellow named Nick Farrell, who is something of a classical adept New Zealand lineage, has put out a video on the Lesser Ritual of the Hexagram, and he presents a rather different approach to the philosophy behind it, and it is an interesting approach. Now, you know, he starts off by essentially saying that everyone who uses the more standard philosophy behind it is biting off on something that's ill-conceived and ignorant, and he's going to give you the real deal. Then somewhere in the video he admits that, well, he doesn't actually have any textual or historical basis for the claim that his is the correct philosophy behind it. That being said, it is very interesting, and it presents a rather different approach to the philosophy of the hexagram ritual, and given his background, it could be a presentation of an oral tradition. However, in this video, I am going to, rather than plagiarizing Mr. Farrell's video, which I'll go ahead and link in the description so that you can check it out, I'm going to go ahead and plagiarize the sources that everybody else plagiarizes and present you with the ritual as I use it and as most other people use it, which is as a method of banishing or negating astrological influences. Now, before we get into the ritual proper, there are a few basic concepts that need to be described. First off, let's look at the hexagram as it applies to the planets. Is that visible? Sure it is. Alright, so we have our basic hexagram here. One upward triangle, one lower triangle, overlapping. Now, if we attribute the planets to them as they're attributed on the Tree of Life, we start on the bottom, where Yesod would be, with the moon. Okay, of course Malkuth is underneath, but we're starting with the moon. Then we move up to Hod with Mercury, come over to Netzek with Venus. In the center, we have the Sun as Tiferet, and then we come up to Gibura as Mars, to Hesed as Jupiter, and on top, usually attributed to Bina, the Third Sephiroth, also known as Understanding. I prefer to attribute it to Doth, which is theoretically a non-Sephiroth, and yet serves the function of bringing the supernals into form, which is well represented by Saturn, the god of time, which binds the abstract and universal principles into the space-time continuum as we know it. So, we have a hexagram and 7 planets. The Sun gets the center, then we have Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn. Now, we can start at any one planet and move clockwise to invoke, counterclockwise to banish. Now, the Sun does not have its own point. For Thelemites, or followers of Aleister Crowley, they compensate for this by using instead a unicursal hexagram. So you have a center point that you can start from, as well as your other 6 points. Classical Golden Dawn system, to do the Sun, you simply do all 6 of the others in order. So you carve the hexagram in the air 6 times, starting with each of the other points to get the Sun as the central and unifying planet. In the greater hexagram ritual, this balanced hexagram with the individual planets, either choosing a planet for a ritual of a specific planet or doing all 6 of them for the Sun, followed by divine, archangelic, spirit, intelligence names, and some sigils that go with those, is used to bring forth the spirits of the various planets, all of the intelligent forces from the divine on down. I'm not going to go through that whole ritual. Feel free to look it up. I've used it. It is quite effective, but a little much for a video presentation. The Lesser Ritual, a little easier to pull off, and uses 4 versions of the Saturn hexagram. Okay? So, why 4 versions? Well, this ritual is designed with an astrological theme. So, rather than having earth in the north, air in the east, fire in the south, water in the west, you start off facing east, and as the notepad falls to the ground, I want you to consider this. If you were to take a standard wheel of the Zodiac, beginning in Aries and progressing counterclockwise through the 12 signs, Aries being a cardinal sign, meaning the initiating or outpouring version of that element, take that wheel, lay it on the ground with Aries in the east. Okay? That also, if you're looking at the wheel, that's the position of the rising sign, or the one coming up at the horizon in the east. So you lay your zodiac wheel on the ground, Aries in the east. Okay? To the north, we're moving counterclockwise along with the signs of the zodiac here. You get down to Cancer, cardinal water. So in the east you have cardinal fire, in the south you have cardinal water. Then you move to the west and you have Libra with cardinal air, and you come around to the north with Capricorn, cardinal earth. I'm sorry, to the south with Capricorn, cardinal earth. So I think I garbled that. What do we have? East, Aries. North, Cancer. West, Libra. South, Capricorn. Fire, water, air, earth. Now we'll do the ritual clockwise. So we'll have fire, earth, air, water. Fire in the east, earth in the south, air in the west, water in the north. Now, the hexagram has 6 points. Doesn't line up very easily with the elements, at least in its classical form. It's a planetary symbol, primarily. So, you horrible, horrible notepad. This is what I get for buying cheap equipment to run my videos. Maybe we'll do a little jump cut there, maybe not. I hope you all find the humor in watching me fumble a little bit. Alright, so, for fire in the east, we use a hexagram, once again, made of 2 triangles, both facing upward, both one overlapping the next. And the symbolism behind this is that fire consumes. So you have one triangle consuming the other for your fire hexagram. And you still keep the attribution of the planets as they were in your classical hexagram. Okay, so you have Saturn, and then we come down and we have Venus, Mercury, and then we have Luna, and of course this one was the upside down one, so we will have Mars and Jupiter. Okay? Now we start at the Saturn point and we move counterclockwise. And we just trace it with our finger, making gold light. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And that is your banishing Saturn hexagram of fire. Alright, now, moving around. Alright, so we've started in the east with fire. Now we're coming to Capricorn in the south for earth. And we are going to go ahead and use the overlapping balanced hexagram for earth. Now, progressing to the west with water. I'm sorry, to the west with air. I'm garbling this, I know. Alright, so we have east with fire. We have south with earth. And that's Aries. That's Capricorn. What the hell is the sign for Capricorn? The squiggly thing. Alright, So now we're coming around to the west with air, and air, often correlated to the intellect, is about separating and organizing things. So again, we have Saturn up top, then we have Venus and Mercury, and then we have Jupiter, Mars, and Luna. Okay? Now we start at the top, again, moving counterclockwise. And up here, of course, we start with Saturn moving counterclockwise. So we're doing banishing Saturn hexagrams in each element. Fire consuming, earth in balance, air separating, and then water unifying or conjoining. Now, water is a little bit weird as far as our downward pointing triangle that has Luna is all the way up top. So we actually start with the lower triangle from the Saturn point, moving counterclockwise. So for our banishing Saturn hexagram of water, counterclockwise triangles, two of them. Okay? So that's south, then we have west, air, Libra, and north, I'm sorry, yeah, north, water, Cancer. Is all that visible on there? Kind of. Well, hopefully you get the point. So, as far as what signs we're tracing in the air, we're on an astrological matrix. East, fire. North, earth. I'm sorry. East, I can't remember my bloody directions. How smart am I really? Alright. East, fire. South, earth. West, air. North, water. Aries, Capricorn, Libra, Cancer. Banishing hexagrams. Two upward triangles for fire, balanced triangles for earth, separating triangles for air, conjoining triangles for water. Saturn point counterclockwise to banish. Now, what this essentially represents is that we are using banishing of Saturn, or banishing of the binding and controlling element in the astrological elements. Okay, so we are getting rid of the force which brings out their astrological powers into our four-element incarnate existence. We are unwinding or unraveling the influences that the current astrological weather brings into our lives. And as far as a magical ritual idea goes, the use for this is pretty plain. Sometimes you need to cast a spell or perform a working when the astrological weather is not ideal. And even as a daily practice, when it comes to asserting your own will more fully, rather than being subject to your reactions to the world around you and your reactions to the cycles of things, you are banishing the force which binds those astrological cycles into your life. You're getting rid of it, you're negating it, which leaves this nice, wonderful void, or this neutrality, into which you assert your will. That makes sense? I hope so. If it doesn't make sense, work with it, and you will be pleased. Alright, so, you remember in the pentagram ritual we have some cool little god names that we say at the quarters to charge the pentagrams. With hexagram ritual, we just have one that we repeat with each hexagram. And it is Ararita. A-R-A-R-I-T-A. Now, what does that mean? It is a noterican, which is a fancy way of saying it's an acronym, where each letter represents an entire word. And let's see if I can remember the whole phrase in Hebrew without consulting my notes. Sometimes my Hebrew is terrible. Akid Rosh, nope. Akid Rosh, Akdoto Rosh, Ichado, Temerato Akkad. One is the beginning of his unity, one is his uniqueness, and his permutation is one. This is kind of taking all these different Hebrew god names which represent different powers and bringing it back to the idea that they're all expressions of a central and universal unity. So with these hexagrams and with the use of the Saturn banishing hexagram in each individual element, we're asserting through the divine name Ararita that this does not only apply to Saturn. We're not simply banishing the Saturn part of each element. We're banishing all of the planets as they influence each element. We are creating a neutrality into which we can express our will. So, when you're performing the hexagram ritual, you carve your hexagram in the air, usually using golden fire, and then say Ararita. Now, classically, of course, you would vibrate. Ararita. I like to say it with a little dramatic flair, as I think I have explained before. I don't think that the vibration of your voice is necessarily what activates the response from the universe. What activates the response from the universe is the heartfelt intensity of your words combined with your intellectual and philosophical acceptance of the meaning to key into these universal powers and call them. Okay? Now, you're banishing. What does that have to do with calling? Human language sucks balls, just so you know. Trying to cram multidimensional concepts into these series of grunts that we use to communicate. Ararita. You're summoning a void. You are summoning the reality in which these powers are negated and neutralized and banished. On the one hand, if they're pouring in on you, you can see it as simply expressing from your inner divine unity the banishing. So you're pouring out Ararita, washing it all away. On the other hand, as the hexagram comes to light, it's emitting that balanced, neutralized energy that comes to dominate your circle. Anyway, play with it, figure out what works for you as far as how you're going to understand it occurring, but at the bedrock, understand that the formula of this ritual has the result of neutralizing the influences of the planets upon your sphere of influence. Now, as to the opening and closing of this ritual, there are a couple ways to do it. If you look in Rigardi's Golden Dawn, it says simply for the Lesser Hexagram Ritual, you use the Kabbalistic cross. Ate, Malkuth, Vigbra, Vigdala, Leolam, Amen. Same as you do in the Lesser Pentagram Ritual. That's not the way I learned it, because my first learning of the Hexagram Ritual came from Modern Magic, and he did it a little non-traditionally. And even since learning the tradition some 10 years ago, I actually stick with the way he presented it. And it uses a different opening known as the analysis of the keyword. Now, this is drawn from and based on the Adeptus Minor initiation, which is all about crucifixion of the lower self and resurrection as a divine being. Typically, I believe this is reserved for the greater hexagram ritual, but I use it for the lesser. Okay? In part because generally I practice the Lesser Banishing Ritual of the Pentagram, followed by the Lesser Banishing Hexagram Ritual. So we've already done the Kabbalistic cross, and rather than saying, oh, I don't have any right to use the formulae of an adept, I say, well, our goal here is magic. So let's go ahead and do some magic. Now, this analysis of the keyword. What's the keyword? INRI, or in Hebrew it would be Yud, Nun, Resh, Yud. And if any of you have seen this on a cross, it's Jesus Rex, Jesus Nazareth Rex Judaica, or Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. Okay? That is the keyword. Remember, the Golden Dawn and most classical magic came from a very Christian era. So the beginning of the entire ritual, the beginning of this hexagram ritual, if you're going to go ahead and use the non-traditional methodology that I prefer, you start by making a cross, and you can even visualize yourself crucified and dying, and you intone Yud, Nun, Resh, Yud, the sign of Osiris slain. Now, we just jumped into Egyptian mythology. When we were being Jesus, now we're also being Osiris. Now, this is a venerable practice called syncretism, or the uniting of various religious paradigms into a single working paradigm. Some people might also call this cultural appropriation. And be careful when you are reaching out and borrowing other people's traditions, especially when they are living cultures who might have been hideously oppressed or massacred by the culture that you belong to. However, this mixing of Egyptian and Christian theologies is very traditional in the West. It goes back a long ways. If we look at Florence in the 16th century, we see the emergence of Hermeticism, the ancient Egyptian teachings within, or somewhat Egyptian teachings, within a Judeo-Christian worldview. And so this correlation between Jesus Christ, the sacrificed and resurrected God, with Osiris, the slain and resurrected God, should not be surprising to us. And within the context of this ritual, it works. Okay? Now, let me just show you briefly. So, Yud Nun Resh Yud, the sign of Osiris slain. Then, you raise your right hand, you do kind of like so. Some people like it very rigid. Aleister Crowley tried to turn it into a swastika because he was Crowley, and that's him. But this is not, I disagree with Crowley entirely. He's trying to turn it into a solar system, solar symbol, when this is the symbol of Isis. Okay, we're going for something dramatic, almost like a dancer. You can be very rigid if you want to make it a letter L, because that fits into the rest of the ritual. I like a little drama, a little bit feminine. L, the sign of Isis in mourning. Okay? So, we go from our Yud Nun Resh Yud, sign of Osiris slain, to L, Isis in mourning. And when we say mourning, we're not talking about the beginning of the day, we're talking about sadness. Because in the mythology, Osiris had been murdered, and Isis, his wife, was understandably rather upset about this. She mourned his death. Now, as we are imbibing this mythology into ourselves, as we are living it out emotionally and energetically and spiritually, this mourning or this sadness is the recognition that in slaying your own ego, in slaying your lesser self to make way for the higher self, under the guidance of the guardian angel and in harmony with the gods and the source of being, there is, of course, a sense of loss in that egotism, represented here by the goddess of the earth, mourning the death of her husband. Next we have V, the sign of Typhon and Apophis. I'm sorry, that's just scribbles to me. I doubt you're going to be able to read it. But okay, so you have Yud Nun Resh Yud, the sign of Osiris slain. L, the sign of Isis in mourning. V, we'll get it in the camera here. It's nice and dramatic. V, the sign of Typhon and Apophis, the destroyer gods. Because Osiris, having been slain, still has to pass through the underworld and be utterly destroyed. His sense of selfhood destroyed. In the mythology, this is also Osiris's body being hacked to pieces and scattered across the earth. Now, in the mythology, Isis then gathers the pieces back together, minus one critical part that she has to kind of fabricate so that she can mate with him and create Horus. In any case, so we have L, V, the sign of Typhon and Apophis, X, the sign of Osiris arisen. Alright, so X, the sign of Osiris risen, or arisen, probably and classically wouldn't have the A, it would just be Osiris risen. So this is the resurrected self. This is the self that has been slain, has been mourned, has been judged and destroyed, and now purified, is resurrected. This is the adept self. This is the purified higher self living through this little human body. So from X, we then open up. And we say, Lux, the light of the cross. So as you're living out this mythology in ritual, you're slaying your lower self. You're mourning your lower self. You're destroying its remnants. And you're resurrecting it with the divine fire. And now you radiate that fire. LVX Lux, the light of the cross. Now at this point in time, if you want to be very traditional, you just keep that rigid cross as you move into the next part of your oration. Okay? I like to go ahead and bring my hands up a little bit and call out to the universe. Okay? Now we have 3 deities, or 4 deities, but 3 functions. Isis, Typhon and Apophis, Osiris. And those get correlated to 3 astrological signs. So we have Virgo for Isis, the mighty mother. Scribble, scribble, scribble. Then we have Scorpio for Apophis, the destroyer. And then we have Sol, not a sign, but rather a planet, for Osiris, slain and arisen. So, in the ritual so far, we've said Yud Nun Resh Yud, the sign of Osiris slain. L, the sign of mourning Isis. V, the sign of Typhon and Apophis. X, the sign of Osiris risen. L, V, X, Lux, the light of the cross. Then we start calling out to the universe. And we say Virgo, Isis, Mighty Mother, Scorpio, Apophis, Destroyer, Soul, Osiris slain and arisen. And now we look at Isis, Apophis, Osiris, and it makes E-A-O, the a Gnostic name of God. So, Virgo, Isis, Mighty Mother, Scorpio, Apophis, Destroyer, Soul, Osiris slain and arisen. And then we raise our hands up to the sky. Isis, Apophis, Osiris, E-A-O. I have a terrible singing voice. And then we say, let the divine light descend. And we draw a rain, a veritable waterfall of light down into our sphere. So, all told, the analysis of the keyword begins with your crucifixion, the mourning of the loss of your lower self, the destruction of its remnants, and your resurrection as a divine being, radiating light. Now we call out to the universe for the elements, the powers, the divine forces which are the source of what we've just gone through. So we've put ourselves through it, and now we're calling those universal powers to answer our call. Virgo, Isis, Mighty Mother, Scorpio, Apophis, Destroyer, Soul, Osiris, slain and arisen. And then we call up to the sky. Isis, Apophis, Osiris, E-A-O. Let the divine light descend. We just let it flood into our space. That's the analysis of the keyword. So, the entire Lesser Hexagram Ritual begins with the analysis of the keyword. Then we go back through our hexagrams, our vanishing hexagrams, okay? We perform the analysis of the keyword, then we go through our banishing hexagrams to eliminate the astrological influences upon us, upon our sphere of sensation, upon our magic, upon our lives, and then we reiterate the analysis of the keyword. Typically, you would start with the Lesser Banishing Ritual, the pentagram. Atemakuth, Vigara, Vigdulav, Leolam, Amen. And then you do your pentagrams and you banish the lower astral plane. Then you do and you finish it off by reiterating the Kabbalistic cross. There's your Lesser Banishing Ritual of the pentagram. Then you move into the Lesser Ritual of the hexagram. You begin with the analysis of the keyword. All the lower elements having been banished from your sphere, now you crucify your lower self that manifested them in the first place. You purify and resurrect your lower self and radiate the light. You call out to the elements of the universe and you draw down the light and you flood it into your sphere. Now you banish whatever higher planetary astrological influences may be affecting you. And you reiterate your crucifixion, purification, resurrection, and once again call to the highest forces in the universe, or some of the higher forces in the universe rather, flood your sphere with light. At this point, you have a highly charged ritual circle. So, I know that was a lot, okay? I will try to get some notes on that up on indigospeaker.com as well as up on integrativemysticism.com. But if you would like, my friends, you can go ahead and join me in a performance of the Lesser Hexagram Ritual. Go ahead, don't be shy. I'm going to go ahead and use my neat little dagger here. Not an air dagger, by the way. This is just a energy director. Okay? Actually, I'm not going to pull that out until it's time to do the hexagrams. Now, what direction am I facing right now? That's west, north. So this is my true east. I'll do it a little bit of an angle so you can see. All right, everybody. If you want, you can pause the video right now and do the Lesser Banishing Ritual of the Pentagram first. And when you're ready, we shall begin. Yod, Nun, Resh, Yod. The sign of Osiris slain. El, the sign of Isis in mourning. V, the sign of Typhon and Apophis. X, the sign of Osiris arisen. L, V, X. Lux, the light of the cross. Virgo, Isis, mighty mother. Scorpio, Apophis, destroyer. Sol, Osiris slain and arisen. Isis, Apophis, Osiris. Eao. Let the divine light descend. Two upward triangles, fire, counterclockwise. Ararita. Carve the circle of light. Overlapping standard hexagram, earth. Ararita. Triangles facing away from each other, air. Ararita. Triangles facing inward toward each other, water. Lower triangle first. Ararita. Complete the circle. And back to the analysis of the keyword. Yod, Nun, Resh, Yod. The sign of Osiris, slain. El, the sign of Isis in mourning. V, the sign of Typhon and Apophis. X, the sign of Osiris arisen. L, V, X. Lux, the light of the cross. Virgo, Isis, mighty mother. Scorpio, Apophis, destroyer. Sol, Osiris slain and arisen. Isis, Apophis, Osiris. Eao. Let the divine light descend. And that, my friends, is the lesser ritual of the hexagram. Many blessings until we meet again.